I remember the exact moment everything shifted. Not the accident, not the hospital lights, not even the pain. It was the silence right before my phone vibrated. Pause. My name is Alina Ward, 33 years old, trauma nurse. Single mother, and for most of my life I believed that being strong meant being quiet. I was wrong. That night started like any other. A 12-hour shift that turned into 16, coffee that tasted like regret, and a drive home through streets that blurred together under yellow streetlights. I wasn't reckless. I wasn't distracted. I was just tired, and sometimes tired is enough. The light turned green. I moved forward, and then sudden pause, headlights. Too fast, too close. A horn screaming through the dark, metal twisted, glass shattered, and the world flipped sideways. When I opened my eyes, everything smelled like antiseptic and smoke. A paramedic leaned over me. "Stay with me, Alina." "Can you hear me?" My voice came out thin. "My kids?" Even then, that was my first thought, not the blood soaking through my sleeve, not the ringing in my ears, just them, always them. I checked my phone with shaking hands. 7:12 p.m. The babysitter left at 8:48 minutes. Pause. 48 minutes to find someone who actually cared enough to show up. So I called the people who were supposed to love me more than anyone else, my parents. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Finally, my mother answered, already annoyed. "Alina, we're about to leave. What is it?" I swallowed through the pain. "I've been in an accident. I'm going into surgery. I need someone to stay with Ava and Noah, just a few hours." Silence, muffled voices in the background, music, laughter. Then the line went dead. No goodbye, no question, nothing. Pause. A few seconds later, my phone buzzed. Family group chat, one message, just one. "You always create drama. We have tickets tonight. Figure it out." I read it twice, then again, because surely I misunderstood. Right, ooh, soft exhale, another message appeared. A laughing emoji from my younger brother. That was the moment something inside me went quiet, not angry, not broken, just quiet. The paramedic noticed my face change. "Everything okay?" I nodded slowly. "Yes," and for the first time in years I meant something different by that word. I borrowed his phone, Googled emergency childcare, called a service that charged more per hour than I spent on groceries in a week. "Triple rate?" the woman asked. "Yes," I said. "Send someone now." Decision made, problem solved, without them, just like always. Surgery lasted 3 hours. They told me later I was lucky. Lucky, funny word. Because while I lay there hooked to machines, I kept replaying that message in my head. "You always create drama." Pause. 8 years of mortgage payments, insurance bills, temporary help. That's what they called it. Temporary, that lasted almost a decade. I never asked for thanks. I never asked for recognition. All I wanted was one moment where they chose me, just once. On the second day in recovery, I opened my banking app. Automatic transfers lined up like soldiers. Month after month. Thousands disappearing into accounts that never once asked if I was okay. My thumb hovered over the screen. No shaking, no hesitation. Cancel, cancel, cancel. It felt like setting down a weight I didn't realize I was still carrying. Marcus, one of the ER doctors, stopped by later. He'd worked beside me for years. Quiet guy, observant. "You look different," he said. "How?" "Lighter," I smiled faintly. "I stopped trying to earn something that should have been free." He didn't ask more. Some people understand without explanations. 5 days later, I went home, slow steps. Stitches pulling with every movement. But my kids ran into my arms like nothing else mattered. And in that moment, nothing did. I thought the hardest part was over. I was wrong. 2 weeks passed, peaceful, quiet, almost too quiet. Then came the knock, 3 sharp hits against my door. My heart jumped. I wasn't ready for confrontation. I wasn't ready for apologies. I wasn't ready for anything connected to them. I looked through the peephole and froze. Standing there was a man I hadn't seen in years. My grandfather, straight posture, steel eyes, the kind of presence that filled a room without effort. He didn't smile, not at first. He just looked at me like he already knew everything. "Alina," he said softly when I opened the door, and then he pulled me into a hug that felt safe, not heavy, not conditional, just safe. "I heard," he murmured. I stepped back. "How? Some truths travel faster than lies." He handed me an envelope. Cream-colored, formal, my name written in his careful handwriting. "My birthday gathering," he said. "Next Saturday, I want you there." I hesitated. He held my gaze. There are things that need to be said. Pause, slow inhale, and just like that, the calm I'd built around myself began to crack because deep down I knew this wasn't just a party, it was a turning point. That night, after the kids fell asleep, I opened my laptop, pulled up years of financial records. Numbers filled the screen, dates, transfers, proof. I stared at the total at the bottom and whispered under my breath, "Oh my God," not because I regretted helping, but because I finally saw how invisible I'd allowed myself to become. Engagement hook, calm tone. If you've ever given everything to people who called it expected, take a breath with me for a second. Pause, because what happened next changed everything. Over the next few days, messages started trickling in from distant relatives. "Your parents said you've been acting strange. They're worried about you. They think the accident affected you emotionally." I almost laughed. Almost, because the story was already being rewritten without me. Again. But this time, I wasn't going to stay silent. The night before the party, I stood in front of my mirror holding a simple navy dress. Nothing flashy. Nothing dramatic, just me. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I needed to prove anything. Not success. Not strength, not loyalty, just truth. Pause, slow build. I didn't know then that walking into that house would split my life into two halves. Before and after, the drive to my grandfather's house felt longer than it actually was. Not because of traffic, because of memory. Every streetlight I passed felt like a question. Was I ready? Was I doing the right thing? Pause. Ava and Noah sat in the backseat, whispering about balloons and cake. They had no idea this night carried the weight of years. And honestly, I wanted to keep it that way. When the estate came into view, my hands tightened around the steering wheel. White columns, warm lights glowing through tall windows. Cars lined up along the driveway like a silent audience waiting for a performance. I parked slowly. Took a breath, another. "Okay," I whispered to myself, "just walk in." The moment I stepped inside, sound wrapped around me, soft violin music, glasses clinking, low conversations floating through the air. And smiles, so many smiles. Some genuine, some curious, some cautious. I could feel eyes turning toward me before anyone said a word. Pause. It always amazes me how quickly a room can decide who you are before you even speak. My Aunt Alina appeared first. She moved toward me with that familiar confident stride, pulling me into a quick hug. "You look strong," she whispered. "I feel steady," I replied. She squeezed my arm gently. "That's better than strong." Across the room, I saw them, my parents, standing near the fireplace. Perfect posture, perfect smiles, the image of a family that never struggled. My mother's laughter froze when she noticed me. My father's jaw tightened just slightly, enough that only someone who knew him well would notice. And then my brother stepped forward, designer suit, easy grin, the kind of confidence that comes from always being protected. "Well," he said lightly, "look who finally decided to show up." I met his gaze. I was invited. His smile flickered for half a second. That was all it took to remind me things had changed. Pause, slow inhale. I didn't come to argue. I didn't come to expose anyone. Not yet. I just wanted to observe. To understand how the room moved around them. And around me. A waiter passed with drinks. I grabbed a glass of sparkling water. My hands were steady, but inside something hummed beneath the surface. Not anger, not fear, anticipation. My mother approached next, her expression soft, almost fragile. "Alina," she said, touching my arm like nothing had happened. "We were worried about you." I blinked slowly. Worried. That word echoed in my chest like a hollow note. "I'm recovering," I said calmly. "Well," she continued, voice slightly louder now, "you stopped answering calls. People started asking questions. People, not you, people." I nodded once. "I needed space." She opened her mouth to respond, but stopped when she noticed relatives watching us. Her smile snapped back into place. Performance mode. Pause. That was the first moment I realized something important. They weren't just pretending for me, they were pretending for everyone else. And maybe they had done it for so long that they believed it themselves. The room filled quickly, voices rising, music swelling, children running between tables. From the outside, it looked like a perfect celebration. Inside, tension threaded through every interaction. Little comments floating toward me. "Your parents said you've been under a lot of stress. We hope you're feeling better emotionally." As if I had imagined everything. As if the message never existed. Ooh, quiet exhale, psychological storytelling. They weren't attacking me directly, they were shaping perception, planting seeds. Alina leaned closer to me. They've been talking all week, she murmured. I know, are you okay? I watched my parents laughing with a group of cousins. Yes, I said softly, for the first time I really am. The violin music faded. A gentle clink echoed through the room. My grandfather stood near the center, glass raised slightly. Even at 70, he carried the authority of someone used to being heard. Conversations slowed, then stopped. Every head turned. And suddenly, the air felt heavier. Before we continue, he said calmly, I'd like to share a few thoughts. His voice didn't need volume, it carried anyway. I felt my heartbeat slow, then quicken, because I knew this moment wasn't just about celebration. It was about truth, but before he could continue, my father stepped forward. Dad, he said carefully, maybe now isn't the time. The room shifted. Curiosity sparked like electricity. Grandfather tilted his head slightly. And when would be a better time, Richard? Silence. My father forced a small laugh. Well, we're here to celebrate. Yes, Grandpa replied gently, and sometimes celebration includes honesty. Pause, tension rising, I felt Ava's small hand slip into mine. She didn't understand the words, but she felt the change in energy. Kids always do. My brother crossed his arms, voice louder now. I think everyone just wants a peaceful evening. Peace, my grandfather said quietly, is not the same as silence. The words settled over the room like falling snow. No one moved, no one spoke. I realized then this wasn't going to be a small conversation. This was going to change everything. And I wasn't sure whether to feel relief or dread. AI voice marker, slower pacing, he turned toward me. Alina, he said, would you mind standing beside me? The room inhaled collectively. I hesitated for a fraction of a second, then stepped forward. Each step felt louder than the last. Shoes against marble, heart against ribs, memory against reality. I could feel my parents watching me, my brother too, waiting, calculating, hoping maybe that I would stay quiet. That I would keep playing the role they wrote for me years ago. The strong one, the reliable one, the one who never needed anything. But something inside me had shifted the night of the accident, and silence didn't fit anymore. Grandpa's hand rested lightly on the folder he carried. My folder, the one filled with numbers, years of quiet support, years of invisible sacrifice. He didn't open it yet. He just looked at the room. Family, he said calmly, is built on trust, and trust requires truth. A murmur rippled through the crowd. People leaned closer. Glasses paused midair. Even the musicians stopped playing. I glanced at my parents. My mother's smile had vanished. My father's posture stiffened. And for the first time, uncertainty flickered across my brother's face. They knew something was coming, they just didn't know how much. Pause, rising psychological tension, and right then, right before the first real question was asked, I realized something that made my chest tighten. This wasn't just their moment, it was mine too. The moment I decided whether to hide behind politeness or finally let the truth exist out loud. The room didn't feel like a birthday party anymore. It felt like a courtroom, not loud, not chaotic, just still. Pause, my grandfather stood beside me, one hand resting lightly on the folder. He didn't rush. He didn't accuse. He simply waited, and somehow that silence carried more weight than shouting ever could. Richard, he said calmly, looking toward my father, a simple question. My father shifted, forcing a polite smile. What's this about? Who has been paying your mortgage for the past several years? The question landed softly, but the impact rippled through the room. A few cousins exchanged glances. Someone near the back let out a quiet huh. My father's smile faltered. We manage our own finances, he replied quickly. Grandpa nodded slowly. Do you? Pause, slow inhale, he opened the folder. The sound of paper sliding against paper echoed louder than it should have. I don't bring this up to embarrass anyone, he continued. I bring it up because truth deserves daylight. He lifted a single sheet. Dates, numbers, transfers. I didn't look at it, I didn't need to, I had memorized those numbers long ago. Every month, he said gently, for nearly 8 years funds were transferred from Alina's account. A murmur rolled across the room, not loud. Just enough to shift the air. My mother's face turned pale. That's a misunderstanding, she said quickly. She insisted on helping. Grandpa nodded. Helping is generous, he replied. But calling someone a burden while accepting that help creates a different picture. Ooh, soft tension, my brother stepped forward. This is unnecessary, he said sharply. Family matters shouldn't be discussed like this. Grandpa's eyes softened but didn't move. Family matters become everyone's concern when the truth is replaced with a story. I felt dozens of eyes on me, some shocked, some confused, some slowly understanding, and in that moment I realized something strange. I didn't feel exposed. I felt seen, for the first time in years. Grandpa flipped another page. No one is being accused, he said calmly. These are simply facts. Mortgage payments, insurance coverage, emergency expenses. Each word landed like a quiet stone in still water, ripples spreading outward. My father's shoulders sank slightly. My mother looked down at the floor. My brother stared at me like he didn't recognize who I had become. Pause, a slower voice pacing. I wasn't angry. That surprised me. Standing there, I expected rage. But what I felt instead was clarity. Like stepping outside after years in a crowded room. Fresh air, space, truth. An aunt near the dessert table whispered, "Oh my God," under her breath. Another relative shook his head slowly, not at me, at them. The shift was subtle but undeniable, perception changing in real time. Grandpa closed the folder gently. "And there is one more thing," he said. The room held its breath. I felt my heartbeat in my throat. Because I knew exactly what was coming next, he lifted his phone. 2 months ago, he continued softly, Alina was in a serious accident. She called her parents for help watching her children while she went into surgery. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. "Dad," my father whispered, but Grandpa continued. "She received a message in response." The room went silent. Even the air felt thinner. He read it exactly as it was written. No emotion, no exaggeration, just words. And those words echoed through the space like a bell. Gasps, soft murmurs. Someone whispered, "That can't be real." My brother's voice rose quickly. It was taken out of context. Grandpa lowered the phone slowly. "What context makes dismissing a medical emergency acceptable?" Silence answered him. Heavy, unavoidable. I felt Ava squeeze my hand tighter. She didn't understand the details, but she understood something important was happening. I knelt slightly, whispering, "It's okay," before standing again. And in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about freeing myself from pretending everything was fine. My father finally spoke, voice strained. "We didn't realize it was that serious." Grandpa's reply was quiet. "Did you ask?" No one answered. The silence stretched. And in that silence, the room changed sides, not loudly, not dramatically. Just slowly shifting. Pause, emotional build. He turned toward me. "Alina," he said gently, "would you like to say anything?" I hadn't planned to speak. I thought I would just stand there, let the facts exist on their own. But something inside me moved. Not anger, not revenge, just honesty. I stepped forward. The room blurred slightly at the edges, faces watching, waiting, judging, understanding, all at once. "I didn't come here to expose anyone," I began softly. My voice didn't shake. "That wasn't my goal." I looked at my parents, then at my brother. "For years," I continued, "I believed love meant being useful, being strong. Not needing anything back." Pause. I thought if I gave enough, eventually I would feel chosen. The words hung in the air. Some relatives nodded quietly, others lowered their eyes. "But the night of the accident," I said, voice steady, "I realized something." I took a breath. "I wasn't strong to you, I was convenient." A soft ooh escaped someone in the crowd, not mockery, recognition. "I don't hate you," I added gently, and that part surprised even me. "I just can't keep pretending this is healthy." My father's expression softened, confusion replacing defensiveness. My mother wiped her eyes silently. My brother looked away. "I'm not sending money anymore," I said calmly. The words felt lighter than I expected, not harsh, just final. "And I'm not disappearing forever," I added. "But I need space, real space. Time for something honest to exist between us, if that's even possible." Pause, deep breath for a moment, no one moved. Then someone near the back began to clap softly. Another joined, not loud applause, just quiet support. And that was when I realized the room wasn't judging me. It was understanding me. My parents didn't argue. They didn't shout. They just stood there, absorbing a version of reality they couldn't rewrite. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel responsible for their reaction. The clapping didn't last long. It wasn't meant to. It wasn't a celebration. It was more like a release. Pause. People slowly returned to their conversations, but nothing felt the same anymore. The air had shifted. Conversations were quieter. Eyes lingered a little longer. And for the first time in years, I wasn't standing in a room trying to prove my worth. I was just standing, breathing, existing. Ava tugged at my sleeve. "Mom," she whispered softly, "can we get cake now?" I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was normal. After everything that had just happened, she was still a child thinking about frosting and candles, and that grounded me. "Yeah," I said gently, "let's get some cake." As I walked toward the table, I could feel people watching. Not judging, not whispering behind my back, just observing. A cousin stepped closer and squeezed my arm lightly. "I didn't know," she murmured. I nodded. Most of them didn't. Because the version of me they knew was always smiling, always capable, always fine. Across the room, my parents stood together quietly. They weren't arguing, they weren't defending themselves. They just looked small. And that realization hit me harder than any confrontation ever could. Pause. For years, I thought strength meant enduring everything alone. But maybe real strength was simply telling the truth and letting people decide what to do with it. Grandpa approached me slowly. No grand speech, no dramatic praise, just a soft, proud smile. "You did well," he said quietly. "I was terrified," I admitted. He chuckled softly. "Courage and fear often arrive together." Ooh, gentle emotional beat. We stood in silence for a moment, watching Ava laugh with her cousins. "That's who this was really for, wasn't it?" he asked. I nodded. "I don't want her growing up thinking love means overgiving." He rested a hand on my shoulder. "And she won't," he said simply. As the evening continued, the energy of the room settled into something strange, not awkward, not tense, just honest. People spoke to me differently, more carefully, more sincerely. A few relatives shared stories of their own boundaries, their own struggles. It felt like a quiet chain reaction, truth unlocking other truths, but not everyone approached. My brother stayed near the far wall, scrolling his phone, avoiding eye contact. My mother occasionally glanced toward me, then quickly looked away, and my father, he just sat, still, thinking. Pause. Slower pacing. About an hour later, guests began to leave. Hugs, goodbyes, soft conversations at the door. Someone whispered, "I'm proud of you." Another said, "That took courage." Each word felt like a small piece of weight lifting off my chest. Eventually, the room grew quieter, only close family remained. And that was when the real tension returned. Because public truth is one thing, private aftermath is another. My father approached first. His steps were slow, careful. "Alina," he began, voice low, "can we talk?" My stomach tightened, but I nodded. We stepped toward the balcony where the night air felt cooler. For a moment he didn't speak. He just looked out at the city lights. "I didn't realize how things looked from your side," he said finally. It wasn't an apology, but it wasn't denial either, and for him that was new. "I tried to tell you," I replied softly. "I know," he said. "I just didn't hear it the way I should have." Pause. That sentence sat between us, unfinished but meaningful. My mother joined us quietly. Her eyes were red. "I thought you were strong enough," she whispered. "I am," I said gently. "But strength doesn't mean endless." She nodded slowly, absorbing the words. My brother arrived last, hands in his pockets. "This didn't have to be public," he muttered. I met his gaze calmly. "It didn't," I agreed. "But ignoring it wasn't working either." He exhaled sharply, then looked down. And for a brief second, I saw uncertainty replace his usual confidence. The conversation didn't become dramatic. No shouting, no accusations. Just a quiet, heavy honesty none of us were used to. "I don't want to lose you," my mother said. "You won't," I replied. "But things have to change." Pause. Emotional reset. After that, we didn't resolve everything. There was no magical reconciliation, just an understanding that the old dynamic was over. And strangely, that felt enough for that night. Ava fell asleep in my arms as we prepared to leave. Her head rested against my shoulder, warm and peaceful. Walking toward the exit, I glanced back once. My parents stood together by the doorway, not smiling, not angry, just thinking. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty for walking away. Outside, the cool air hit my face. I inhaled deeply. Freedom didn't feel loud. It felt quiet, steady. Like finally setting down something heavy you didn't realize you'd been carrying for years. Grandpa walked beside me to the car. You changed more than just your story tonight, he said. What do you mean? I asked. You changed the way everyone in that room thinks about boundaries, he replied. I hadn't thought about it that way, but maybe he was right. Driving home, the city lights blurred past the window. My phone buzzed with messages. Supportive texts, heart emojis, even a few apologies from extended family. I didn't reply right away. I just watched Ava sleeping in the back seat and let the silence exist. Slow emotional build because even though the confrontation was over, something deeper was beginning. A new chapter I didn't fully understand yet. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a quiet thought formed. What happens when truth settles in after the noise fades? The morning after the party felt strangely quiet. No dramatic music, no sudden resolution. Just sunlight slipping through the curtains and Ava humming softly in the kitchen while she tried to pour cereal without spilling it. Pause for years, mornings used to begin with pressure, messages to answer, problems to fix, expectations to meet. That morning, there was only stillness. And honestly, it felt unfamiliar. I wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and walked into the kitchen. Ava looked up and smiled. Did we win yesterday? She asked. I blinked. Win, she nodded seriously. Like in movies when people talk a lot and then everyone learns something. I laughed softly. Maybe we didn't win, I said gently, but we told the truth and that matters more. She seemed satisfied with that answer. Kids have a way of simplifying things adults overcomplicate. My phone buzzed again. Messages from relatives kept arriving, some supportive, some cautious, a few awkward attempts at humor. But one notification made my chest tighten. Dad, I stared at the screen for a few seconds before opening it. Can we talk later? No pressure, just when you're ready. No excuses, no arguments, just a simple sentence. And somehow that felt like the biggest shift of all. Pause, slow emotional beat, the next few days passed quietly. No big confrontations, no dramatic scenes, just small changes that felt enormous. I stopped checking my bank app every hour. I stopped rehearsing imaginary conversations in my head. I slept longer, breathed deeper. And slowly, the tension I had carried for years began to loosen. One afternoon, I met Grandpa at a small cafe near the park. He sat by the window, stirring his coffee slowly. So, he said with a knowing smile, how does freedom feel? I thought for a moment. Not loud, I replied. More like peace I don't have to earn. He nodded approvingly. That's the healthiest kind. We talked about ordinary things, Ava's school projects, the weather, a movie he recently watched. And that was the most surprising part. Life didn't become dramatic after the truth came out. It became normal, stable. And for someone used to chaos, normal felt like a luxury. Soft build. A week later, my parents invited me for dinner, just me, no extended family, no audience. I hesitated before agreeing, not out of fear, but out of caution. Boundaries meant choosing when to show up, not feeling obligated. When I arrived, the house looked the same. Same furniture, same pictures on the wall. But the energy felt different, quieter. Less certain. My mother greeted me with a careful hug. My father stood nearby, hands folded as if unsure where to begin. Dinner started awkwardly. Small talk about work, traffic, Ava's drawings. Then finally my father cleared his throat. I've been thinking a lot, he said slowly. I waited. No rushing, no rescuing him from his own words. I didn't realize how much you carried alone, he admitted. The honesty in his voice caught me off guard. Not perfect. Not dramatic, just real. My mother looked down at her plate. I thought asking for help made you feel needed, she said quietly. I didn't realize it was making you feel invisible. That sentence landed gently but deeply. Because it showed something had shifted. They weren't defending themselves. They were reflecting. Pause, emotional tension release. I'm not expecting everything to change overnight, I told them. And I'm not here to punish anyone. They both nodded. We just want to learn how to do this differently, my father said. For the first time, the conversation felt balanced, not me trying to prove my worth, not them trying to control the narrative. Just three people trying. Over the next month, our interactions changed slowly. Shorter conversations, more listening, less assumption. They stopped asking about money, stopped expecting immediate answers. And I stopped feeling like I had to carry everyone's emotional weight. Meanwhile, my own life began to expand in ways I hadn't noticed before. I started saying yes to things I used to postpone. Weekend trips with Ava. Long walks without checking my phone. Even small hobbies I had abandoned years ago. Pause. It was as if removing one heavy responsibility created space for everything else to breathe. One evening, Ava asked me something unexpected. Mom, why are you smiling more lately? I paused, because I hadn't realized I was. Maybe, I said slowly, because I finally feel like myself again. She grinned. I like this version? Her words hit deeper than any applause ever could. Ooh, gradual climax build. Months passed. Not perfect, not flawless, but honest. And then one afternoon, Grandpa called with news that would quietly complete the circle. He had officially transferred a small property into my name, not as a reward but as a gesture of trust. Consider it a foundation, he said, not a rescue. Standing there with the documents in my hand, I felt something shift inside me. Not relief, not triumph, just stability, a future built on truth instead of obligation. The final conversation with my parents happened on a calm Sunday evening. We sat on the porch watching the sunset fade into soft shades of orange. No tension, no performance, just quiet reflection. I'm proud of you, my father said suddenly. I blinked. That sentence used to feel impossible to hear. And now it arrived without pressure, without expectation, just sincerity. I'm proud of myself too, I replied gently. And that was the real climax. Not revenge, not public victory, just self-recognition. Pause, slow emotional landing. Driving home that night, Ava asleep in the back seat, I realized something powerful. The truth hadn't destroyed my family, it had reshaped it. Some parts grew stronger, some parts stayed fragile. But everything became real, and real is where healing actually begins. I parked the car, turned off the engine, and sat there for a moment, listening to the quiet, feeling the weight of years finally settle into something lighter. Not because everything was perfect, but because I no longer had to pretend. I thought telling the truth would end my story, but it didn't. It finally gave me a life that felt like mine.